Here's a question. They released 15 albums, performed on Top of the Pops over 15 times, and in total have given 40 years of their lives to making music together. Who am I talking about? Well, of course, it's Showaddywaddy. Showaddywaddy's first single, Hey Rock and Roll, was released in 1974, and today they're still touring. I spoke to Dave Bartram. He stepped aside as lead singer some years back in 2011, and now manages the band. So I asked him how it all began.
Showaddywaddy was the amalgamation, basically, of two bands. I was fronting a band that were playing at a pub venue on the outskirts of Leicester, our hometown, and we were a four-piece, and another four-piece outfit would regularly come along and occasionally sort of plug in and play, and they did the odd night themselves at the same venue. And one night we decided to sort of get together and do a few rock and roll songs at the end of the night, and there was this 8-piece on stage, and there were a few people that weren't playing instruments, didn't really know what to do, so they sort of jigged around, and we did I think Summertime Blues by Eddie Cochran or something along those lines, and the public went wild. And discussing it afterwards over a pint, we thought, well, there seemed to be a little bit of chemistry there, and we took it from there.
Do you know, it's one of my earliest music TV memories is Showaddywaddy on Top of the Pops. I was born in 1973, so I would have been 5 or 6 years old, and to this day, I'm going to wonder how to retell this story, but to this day, I remember sitting there with my cousin, watching the TV, and there was, how to describe this, when you were singing, there was like a reflection of a triangle basically coming out of your nose, and myself and my cousin, basically from that time on, called you the Bogey Band, and it's one of my very, very earliest memories is this sort of reflective prism that must have just come off, I don't know, the lighting from Top of the Pops. And I think you were pretty well the first band I ever saw on Top of the Pops, because you made it to Top... When was your first appearance on Top of the Pops?
The very first appearance, which I hasten to add, was a rather memorable one.
Tell me why.
Well, the first appearance was in 74 with our first single, Hey Rock and Roll, and obviously we're very, very excited to be doing our first Top of the Pops performance, and we turned up at Shepherd's Bush in London, ready to rock and roll, and, to show the world what we could do, and there was an industrial dispute, and our very first performance on Top of the Pops was performed without drums, without amplifiers, without any of the sort of nonsense, the charade to make it look as if you were actually playing. It was performed on a Morecambe and Wise set.
Great start, great first appearance, and then soon after you had your first number one.
There were 3 charts at the time. There was the New Musical Express chart, there was the Melody Maker chart, and then there was what they call the official Gallup chart. Across the 3 charts we had 4 number ones, but in the official chart we only actually had 1 number one, which was Under the Moon of Love in 1976. But too many number 2s. But having said that, I wouldn't mind one now.
Indeed. Do you think in any way that you were going against the trend in the 70s insofar as where music was going, and you were just a really good old-fashioned rock and roll band?
Well, yeah, indeed we were, but at the time when we sort of were emerging as such, there were sort of a record company and other so-called advisors who were trying to steer us towards the glam rock thing that was obviously very, very high profile at the time, but other than wearing a few glittery sleeves on our teddy boy drapes, we were having none of it. And as you say, it was all about rock and roll, and teddy boys and rock and roll went together, certainly when it came to UK rock and roll. And we were up and running, but the show, the colour was all very much part of the 70s.
Are you telling me you weren't tempted by 13-minute long tracks that had no vocals and just sort of meandered into instrumentals?
Well, dare I say that we'd been there, we'd got the T-shirt, and it hadn't proved very successful. If you want to be an exponent in that kind of music, you've either got to be an exceptional guitar player, or someone like Ginger Baker from Cream, sort of hammering his drums mercilessly for 15 minutes. But we weren't quite as musically gifted as that. But we had our own sort of way of putting it across, and were perhaps gifted as entertainers. entertainers.
Take me back to that period of time. I was very, very little, so I've got no memory of it. What was it like being in the music industry in the mid-70s?
Wild. Absolutely wild. It was just pre-sort of video age. And obviously to get yourself out there, you literally had to go to do Top of the Pops in Holland or over to do a show called Music Laden in Germany. We were on and off planes and in and out of cars literally every day of the week. It was a very, very busy time, and sometimes when I look back, it seems a bit of a blur.
Bits you don't remember.
Yeah, indeed.
Is it a time that you look back on with great fondness, though?
I think everyone looks back at the 70s with great fondness. I think in a sense we were fortunate because we had this ability to make people feel happy, to make people feel good. And the 70s, rather like the current times, there were a lot of problems in business. We had regular sort of minor strikes and electricity blackouts and things like that. But somehow Showaddywaddy were built for those kind of eras.
Now from a rock legend to a rock and roll legend. We're hearing from Dave Bartram in this hour. Dave, of course, lead singer of Showaddywaddy for the best part of 40 years. He hung up his microphone in 2011, but he still manages the band, and I spoke to him last week. And I went on to ask him how they've managed to keep rocking for 4 decades.
It's all about entertainment value, and it's all about giving value for money, giving people a great night out. It's a very simple philosophy, really.
You released at the end of last year a very interesting book, which I hasten to add is not autobiographical.
There are autobiographical elements contained within the book.
But it's not. It's not an autobiography.
It's not an autobiography. It is an account of a 10-week nightmare period during 2005 when we undertook to do 33 caravan parks, expecting to have a lot of fun along the way, but it didn't quite work out as expected.
Go on, give my listeners an idea of some of the things that didn't quite work out.
Well, far be it from me to look down my nose at sort of caravan parks, because I spent much of my childhood taking holidays in Norfolk at my father's caravan. But some of these parks, shall we say, were not really up to scratch. The squalor that we were expected to live amongst was staggering. I was sat in a deck chair one night after we'd had a pretty reasonable gig, and it was a really warm night, and I sat out in a decrepit deck chair with my iPod on, listening to some tunes, and in between one I could hear a rustling, and immediately took my headphones out and looked underneath the caravan that we were residing in, and there was a bin liner, black bin liner, and surrounded by 20 rats who were basically feasting themselves on the remnants that had come out of the bin bag, and that really was, it became almost a daily occurrence. Some of I think health and safety would have had a field day if they'd gone to some of those places.
When you're looking in sort of the later years of your career, for example, playing caravan parks, do you look back wistfully on the glory days, or do you still love performing full stop?
Well, performing was what it was all about. That's why we went out to do the 33 dates. I think a performer, if you love getting out there and playing before an audience, sometimes you don't consider sort of the technical requirements that a venue needs to provide, but you just want to get out and do it. And of course, there's a paycheck at the end of it as well. You know, there's always an ulterior motive. But it was about getting out and performing. But sometimes venues perhaps cannot facilitate a band. Obviously, there were 6 of us and a lot of equipment, and to be put on a postage stamp of a stage in the corner of basically was nothing more than a bar was not really what we were all about, and we couldn't put on our proper performance, something we could be proud of.
Did you at least have punters there? Were people watching you?
Oh, every night the places were packed to the rafters. Yeah, I think I'm quoted in the book as saying the particular company involved, the holiday company involved, were trying to up the ante a little bit, and it was the first time that had actually taken on a name band as such to do a tour of this kind. But pretty much everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and the tale is told in my book, The Boys of Summer.
Why did you throw in the towel in 2011?
The magic had gone. I was also suffering from chronic asthma, which was affecting my singing ability, and basically the enjoyment was draining out of me, and I just thought, well, perhaps I'll go out on a high. I could carry on sort of rather like a lot of performers do up to the sort of the age of 70, I think. Some of the Stones are.
Jagger, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Still, amazingly fit and well on it. But I don't know, the magic had gone. And obviously playing the odd sort of dingy caravan park didn't help. And I just thought, yeah, it was time to move on.
To use a football analogy, you've left the field and you're now in the dugout, so you're managing the band. You're coming to the stables in Wavendon on Saturday the 16th of February, and also to the Corn Exchange in Bedford on the 12th of April. What can we expect from the show? Who's taking your place for starters?
Well, as a young guy, I say young guy, I think he's around 45 years.
Younger.
Younger. A guy called Andy, he has a great voice, a different voice to mine. He's not a sort of throaty rock and roll singer, but he sings very, very well. He's a great entertainer, and really the boys couldn't have got anyone better to fill my shoes, so I'm really pleased on that score. But it'll be an adrenaline-fueled night of rock and roll, and the boys will be out there giving their all for 2 hours.
I should have mentioned as well that you're coming to Chesham as well, which is on our patch. You're going to the Elgiva Theatre on the 30th of March, so you're touching the three corners of the three counties. Dave, I'm sure it's going to be a great gig. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you all the best in your semi-retirement. I don't imagine you fully retiring, especially that you're still managing Showaddywaddy, and I wish you luck with the book as well.
Semi-retirement? I am an author.
Oh, sorry, yes. 10% retirement. I wish you all the best with everything you've gone to do.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Wendy joins me. Wendy, you've sent me a text here that says you've booked 20 gigs with them this year.
It's early start now. Yeah, we've got 20 this year. We went to 17 last year.
Wow.
We got 20 this year.
Well, what is it you love so much about Showaddywaddy?
Everything. The night is a fantastic night from start to finish. They're absolutely fabulous.
Now, I love certain bands, like, for example, I love Bruce Springsteen. I never tire of seeing him, but I generally see him once a year. Don't you get a bit bored by the time you get to the 18th, 19th one of the year?
Never get bored. I got in March now we got 3 weekends in a row. And in May, we got one on the Friday, one on the Saturday as well.
Wow. Well, Wendy, this is fandom of its most committed nature. It's wonderful that you follow them so closely, and I'm sure you'll enjoy them very much on this tour.
We will indeed.
Thank you very much. So Wendy, who got in touch to say that she's followed them, or is following them on 20 gigs this year. How fantastic is that?